You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. The Cauldron of Hate, a story by Grant Baciocco. Chapter 2. The Cauldron of Hate was released the next day. Their attorney, Barry Bookbinder, of the law firm Bookbinder & Jones, had argued that since they had been stopped by the League of Good before they actually left the bank's premises, all they were guilty of was property destruction for breaking the window, the vault door, the wall, and the liberation of 2 potted plants. He stated that they would pay for the repairs to the bank out of the Cauldron of Hate's bank account. The judge agreed to this, provided that they perform a court-approved community service. Despite the collective arguing of the Cauldron of Hate's members, Barry agreed, and the Blinding Skull, the Living Lump, and Plant Lady found themselves free and standing on the sidewalk outside of the courthouse. Barry clapped the Blinding Skull on the back. "Listen, you're all tired, you've had a long day or two. Why don't you all go back to your lair, and I'll come by tomorrow, and we'll talk this through." "Community service," scoffed Skull. "Now we have to serve the very community we've sworn to terrorize." "Hey, listen," Barry replied. "You should have come to me before you tried to rob that bank. Besides, what kind of mastermind supervillains try to rob the bank they have their own savings account set up in anyway?" Skull scowled. "I didn't know our account was set up there. I assumed our savings were in Switzerland, like every other supervillain team on Earth. But that's what I get for assigning the Cauldron of Hate's treasury duties to Lump." "Oh, gee, Skull, I'm awful sorry about that," Lump shrugged. "I was on my way to Swiss Bank, but I saw a billboard that said that every new savings account at the Saddle River City Savings and Loan got a free toaster. I like toast." The Blinding Skull rubbed his temples. Yes, very well. You do know that after this you're not the treasurer anymore, right?" Lump lowered his head. "Yeah." Plant Lady reached out and patted Lump's arm. "Go easy on him, Skull. You were the one who appointed him treasurer in the first place." The Blinding Skull scowled. Barry cleared his throat. "Well, you guys won't be needing a treasurer any longer anyway. After the repairs are done and I take my fee, you guys are going to be broke." "Broke?" Skull yelped as he flung himself against the Living Lump's side. "My plans for my glorious death ray ruined." "Again, why don't you all go back to the lair and we'll talk tomorrow about what's next," Barry consoled. Skull sniffed back a tear. "Fine. Come on, Lump, Plant Lady. Let's go back to the hate pit." Barry watched as the 3 climbed up into the truck. Luckily, Barry was able to save it from impound. The Blinding Skull looked over his shoulder to make sure Lump was seated safely in the bed. Once he saw that he was seated and that the Plant Lady had buckled up, he turned the key in the ignition and pulled off down the street towards their secret lair. The Hate Pit. The Cauldron of Hate had resided in the Hate Pit for 2 years now. It was located 3 miles below the Saddle River City dump. When the trio had been looking for a proper base of operations and the Blinding Skull had suggested this idea, the Plant Lady was immediately nonplussed. But then the Blinding Skull argued, "Who is actually going to dig through a dump to try and find us?" She could hardly argue, especially after Skull promised to build her the world's first fully functional underground greenhouse. She'd agreed if only to see if he could actually do it. He did. The Hate Pit had everything the team needed: the greenhouse for Plant Lady, a destructive sciences lab for the Blinding Skull, and a peanut butter shake machine for Lump. The lair also included a vehicle bay, private sleeping quarters, a full kitchen, fitness room, complimentary high-speed internet, and more. It truly was one of the most glorious structures ever built. Under a dump. The trio arrived at the Hate Pit defeated. The Plant Lady went to her greenhouse, the Living Lump went to make himself a shake, the Blinding Skull stormed into his lab and slammed the door. Chapter 3. It wasn't until just before 10 a.m. the next morning that the Blinding Skull emerged from his lab and made his way to the galley for breakfast. He found Lump and Plant Lady in there watching the large flat screen on the wall that showed a shot of a bank of microphones on the front steps of City Hall. "What's going on?" Skull asked. "It appears as if our friends in the League of Good are going to hold a press conference," Plant Lady replied. "Great," Skull smirked as he got down a package of instant oatmeal. "More self-aggrandizing backslapping, like they need that." Lump looked up from his shake. What's self-aggrandizing?" "Means making yourself feel important, dear," Plant Lady replied. "Oh." Plant Lady turned up the volume on the screen as the League of Good stepped towards the microphones. El Exo spoke first. "Good morning, dear citizens. It is an honor to talk to you here today. The League of Good wanted to talk directly to the citizens today to tell you all that as the sun rises on another beautiful day right here in the best city in the country, we, the League of Good, has finally been able to destroy the supervillain team known as the Cauldron of Hate for good." "What?" the Skull yelled back to the TV, his mouth full of oatmeal. On the screen, Suprema, the cosmic princess, stepped forward. "That is right. We have heard from our sources that the finances of the Cauldron of Hate have been completely wiped out. No longer will they be able to financially support their attacks against this fair city." The mighty ranch hand stepped forward and tipped his hat back. "That's right, partners. And heck, even if those three Jaspers had gotten away with all the money and all the banks in the city, well, shoot, they wouldn't have posed a threat. You see, them three have been at it for years, and even with the strength of the living Lump, the plant know-how of the Plant Lady, and the smarts of the Blinding Skull, we've defeated them at every turn. They're no match for the League of Good." "That is right," LXO said. "That is why, as of this moment, we are officially declassifying the Cauldron of Hate as a supervillain team. The city of Saddle River has nothing to fear from them ever again." On the screen, the people gathered at City Hall began to cheer. The Saddle River City Central High School marching band launched into a fanfare, and the mayor stepped forward to take pictures with the League of Good. In the galley of the Hate Pit, there was silence. Plant Lady slowly reached out and switched off the TV. "Can they do that?" Lump asked. "Can they say we're not supervillains anymore?" The Plant Lady rubbed her hands together. I'm not sure. I guess the..." "No!" the Blinding Skull interrupted. "No! They can't do that. They can't just say we're not going to be supervillains anymore. They can't declassify us. I mean, we haven't even been classified in the first place." "I think they meant in their files," Plant Lady said softly. "It doesn't matter what they mean. They can't do it." The Blinding Skull's brain started glowing brighter. "This is an injustice, and it will not stand. They will pay for what they've done today." Suddenly, a buzzer sounded. Lump turned to a computer screen on the wall. "Our lawyer's here. He's at the back tube entrance." "Buzz him in, Lump," the Blinding Skull barked as he tapped his spoon on the counter. Lump pushed the button to open the door, allowing Barry to enter the tube to descend to the lair. "Maybe they're right," the Plant Lady said softly. "Maybe we should just give it up. I mean, we really haven't achieved anything." "That's what they want," the Blinding Skull railed. "They want us to just give up. I don't know about you, dear friends, but this," he gestured towards the screen, "this has me more fired up than just about anything. I think it's time to make this city, the League of Good, and the entire world pay. I think it's time to build the Death Ray." There was a silence in the room. No one realized that Barry had entered during the last part of the Blinding Skull's speech. Barry cleared his throat. "It's probably better, as your attorney, if I disregard what I just heard." The living Lump stood to offer Barry his chair. Barry sat, placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and began taking out some papers. Lump shuffled over to the sink and called over his shoulder. "You want a shake, Barry?" No thank you, Lump," Barry replied. "I actually don't have too much time here today. I just came by so we could decide on the community service you will be taking part in as part of your sentence." "I don't suppose we could do our community service helping to rebuild the bank," the Blinding Skull said quickly, hoping at a second chance at the vault's contents. Barry looked up. No." Barry flipped open a folder. "Here's your choices. Litter removal along the highway." "Ooh," squealed the Lump. "Would we get to wear those orange vests?" "I think so," Barry replied. The Blinding Skull shook his head. "No, I'm not going to stand on the side of the highway as cars whiz past us, letting the wretched citizens of this city yell things at us as they go by. Absolutely not. Barry sighed and looked back down at his files. You could work at the morgue. The lump fainted instantly, peanut butter shake mixings falling all over the floor. The blinding skull and the plant lady shot Barry a look. Barry swallowed. Sorry, forgot about how queasy he is about that kind of thing. The plant lady sent 3 poinsettia plants over to help wake Lump and get started on cleaning up the mess. Barry shuffled through his papers again. Here we go, he said, removing a sheet and holding it up. You could mentor a Saddle River City youth soccer team. The plant lady looked over her glasses. Mentor a youth soccer team? Yes, you'd be responsible in helping organize the team, be there at all the practices, bring snacks, carpool the kids to games, things like that. The plant lady reached out for the paper Barry was holding. He handed it to her. She adjusted her glasses and looked it over. 10-year-olds? Don't seem like they'd be that bad to work with. Says here the season is only 3 months long. Barry nodded. We'd be free and clear by then, eh? She asked. Yep, Barry replied. The blinding skull chortled. The chortle built into a loud snicker. It then tumbled into a piercing giggle, then a deep guffaw. Finally, it roared into a deafening laugh. Work with children? Me? Never. His laugh continued, slowly seeping into a bubbling titter. Barry sighed again. Well, those are the 3 choices the judge sent over. You're going to have to pick one. But why? The blinding skull wailed, throwing his hands down on the counter. You said it yourself. We didn't actually steal anything. You do realize how thin an excuse that is, right? I mean, the judge barely bought that. Now, if you want, I can go back and ask, but I think if I do, she may change her mind and throw you all behind bars, Barry said gravely. The plant lady looked over at the blinding skull. Let's do the one with the kids, Skull. The other 2 are 6 months. This we'll have done in 3. But kids are disgusting, snot-nosed little whiners, whined the blinding skull, wiping his nose. The plant lady regarded him for a moment. Yeah, I could see why you wouldn't want to hang out with them. The blinding skull crossed his arms and stuck out his lower lip. Barry, the plant lady said, handing the paper back to him, we'll do the soccer one. It'll do us good to get out from under the dumps for a bit. Who knows? It might be fun. I doubt it, said the blinding skull. Great. I'll get the paperwork to the judge, Barry said as he fished some papers from his briefcase. Here's the reporting instructions and your service sheet. You'll need the coach to sign that service sheet after every practice. If you miss one practice, it's jail. The plant lady nodded and took the forms. Just then, at the repeated patting on the cheek by one of the poinsettias, the living lump raised his head from the floor. Ooh, what happened? The blinding skull looked down at him. Barry said morgue. Morgue, Lump repeated, and then passed back out. You've been listening to The Cauldron of Hate. To download a PDF of the chapter you just heard, visit cauldronofhate.com. The Cauldron of Hate was written by Grant Baciocco. The story was edited by Liz Brown, and the audio was edited by Steven Staver. Music by Dan Ring. Special thanks to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who make this content possible. And a special mention to those who supported the producer level, including Dorothy Baciocco, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, David Akers, Jamie Donmeyer, and Vicky Sebring. To find out more about becoming a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. This episode is copyright 2021 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.